You can afford it. The number in your account says yes. The math says yes. You've checked more than once. And still, standing at the counter, something in your chest tightens. A small voice says, you shouldn't, that's too much. You don't deserve this. So you put it back or you buy it and then carry this low hum of guilt around for 3 days like you did something wrong. I want you to notice how strange that is. The money was there, the decision was reasonable, and you felt like a criminal. Here's the thing, nobody explains about that feeling. Picture a smoke alarm installed in a house a long time ago, back when the house really was on fire. That alarm did its job, it kept someone safe, but the fire went out years ago and nobody ever went back to reset it. So now it goes off when you make toast. That's what's happening in your nervous system at the checkout. If you grew up in a house where money caused tension, where a bill arriving changed the temperature of the room, where we can't afford it made your stomach drop, you didn't just learn to be careful with money. Your nervous system learned something much deeper. It learned that spending is dangerous, that money leaving is a threat. And a child's nervous system doesn't file that under preference, it files it under survival. Decades later, a different life, different circumstances, the alarm still fires. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because nobody ever turned it off. And here's where it starts to cost you. That alarm doesn't only go off at the checkout. It fires when you think about investing. It fires when you consider asking for the salary you're actually worth. It fires when an opportunity asks you to spend before you earn. The thing you think is protecting your money is quietly capping your life. One evening of guilt is uncomfortable. A decade of an alarm you never questioned. That's something else entirely. Now, I want to be careful here because there's an obvious objection and it's a fair one. Someone is thinking, isn't a bit of guilt useful? Isn't that what stops people from wrecking themselves financially? It sounds reasonable, but watch what actually happens. Think about the people you know who genuinely struggle with overspending. Are they people who feel nothing when they spend? Almost never. Most of them feel terrible. The guilt is enormous. It just arrives at the wrong time, after the purchase, not before it. Guilt is not a brake, it's a passenger. It doesn't stop the car, it just complains about the direction. And there's a second problem, which is worse. Guilt is exhausting, and exhausted people make bad decisions. You hold the line for 2 weeks, feeling awful about every small purchase. Then, one difficult evening, the pressure breaks. You spend more in one go than you would ever have spent if you'd just been calm about it. You've probably lived that exact cycle: restrict, resist, resent, then release. That's not a discipline problem. That's what happens when you try to run your financial life on an emotion that was never designed to be a management system. So, if guilt isn't discipline, what is it? To answer that, we have to go back to where it was installed. Nobody sat you down as a child and taught you a philosophy of money. That's not how any of this gets transmitted. What actually happened was much quieter. You watched, you absorbed the atmosphere in the room. You noticed that certain envelopes made your mother go silent. You noticed which conversations happened behind a closed door. You noticed that asking for something at the wrong moment produced a tone of voice you didn't want to hear again. You were a child. You couldn't analyze any of it. So you did what children do. You built a rule. Money is scarce. Wanting things causes problems. Be small. Don't ask. And here's the part that matters. That rule worked. It genuinely did. It kept you out of arguments. It made you easier. It protected you from disappointment because you learned not to want anything loudly enough to be refused. That's why it's still running. Your nervous system doesn't keep rules because they're accurate. It keeps them because they worked once at a moment when you needed protecting. You're not carrying a flaw. You're carrying an old piece of armor that fitted you perfectly when you were 9. Now, let's follow that armor forward, because this is where it gets expensive. At 20, it costs you very little. You're not earning much. Being careful is genuinely sensible. At 30, it starts costing something real. You avoid looking at your accounts because looking triggers the alarm, so you don't have a clear picture. You don't negotiate the salary because asking feels dangerous. You leave money in a current account for years because moving it feels like losing it. At 40, the gap has become structural, not because you earned less than the person beside you, but because they invested at 30 and you didn't, because they asked and you didn't, because every decision that required tolerating that feeling for a few uncomfortable minutes, you quietly avoided, and every single one of those avoidances felt responsible at the time. That's what makes this so hard to see. Money guilt doesn't feel like self-sabotage. It feels like caution. It feels like being sensible. It wears the costume of a virtue. Meanwhile, the actual outcome is less invested, less earned, less asked for, and less built. One evening of guilt is uncomfortable. 20 years of it is a completely different financial life. So what do we do about it? And here's where I'd ask you to be careful, because the obvious answer is wrong. The obvious answer is stop feeling guilty. Just decide not to. That doesn't work, and you already know it doesn't because you've tried. You can't argue a nervous system out of a survival rule with logic. That's not the layer it lives on. Telling yourself this is irrational while your chest is tight is like reading the fire code to a smoke alarm. It isn't listening. It doesn't speak that language. Here's the shift. The goal was never to feel nothing when you spend money. The goal is to spend deliberately and to let the feeling be there without letting it drive. There's a real difference between those two things. Feeling nothing is numbness, and numbness is its own problem. That's the person who spends without registering it at all. Deliberate is different. Deliberate means I decided this in advance on purpose, and the discomfort I'm feeling right now is not new information. That last part is the whole reframe, so let me say it more directly. When the guilt shows up at the checkout, it is not telling you anything about this purchase. It's an old alarm responding to an old fire. The feeling is real, the danger is not. And once you can tell those two apart, once you can notice the feeling and correctly identify it as a smoke alarm going off over toast, it stops being a verdict. It becomes just a sensation, uncomfortable, familiar, and no longer in charge. So, what does that actually look like on a Tuesday? 3 things, and they're deliberately small, because the whole point is that they have to survive contact with a nervous system that panics. First, decide in advance. The alarm fires hardest in the moment of decision, so take the decision out of the moment. Decide once, calmly, at a time when nothing is at stake. This much goes to the future, this much is genuinely mine to spend, and then let the in-the-moment purchases be pre-approved. You're not trying to win the argument at the counter, you're trying to not have the argument at the counter. Second, name it when it fires. This sounds almost too simple, but it does something real. When the tightness arrives, say to yourself, that's the alarm, not the fire. You're not arguing with the feeling and you're not obeying it. You're labeling it, and a labeled feeling loses an enormous amount of its authority. Third, practice on something small, not a big purchase. A small one, deliberately chosen, that you know is genuinely fine. Buy it, feel the alarm go off, and then, this is the important part, do nothing about it. Don't return it. Don't spend the evening justifying it. Just let the alarm ring and let nothing bad happen. That's how a nervous system updates, not by argument, by evidence. I want to leave you with one thought. The guilt you feel around money was, at some point, somebody's attempt to keep you safe. Maybe it was a parent under real pressure. Maybe it was you at 9 years old making a rule that let you survive a difficult house. It deserves some respect. It was doing a job, but it's been running unsupervised for a very long time on information that stopped being true decades ago. You're allowed to go back and reset it. Because being good with money was never about feeling bad when you spend it. It's about being calm enough to decide clearly, and then living with the decision without the shame. The alarm can keep ringing, it just doesn't get to run the house anymore. If this landed, subscribe. I make one of these every day and send it to someone who needs to hear it.